Hey Abdullah, did you hear that Muslims are now going to space? What? How can that be? Muslims are a bunch of savages. They should live in caves, not going to space. Yes, not only that, but they're also going to pray in space. What? No, we must put a stop to this. I have an idea. Why don't we go to space ourselves and find out how many Muslims are up there? That's a great idea, David. Let's go.
All engines look good. Beginning roll program.
Oh my Darwin, the space is full of Muslims. They are everywhere. We have to do something. What's the plan here, Abdullah? Wait, I have an idea. Why don't I make a YouTube video whining about Islam which has nothing to do with space travel? Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. This will surely destroy Islam and Muslims and stop Muslims from going to space. Yeah, let's go back and shoot the video. Wait, I can't go back now. I can't find Earth. What do you mean? It's right there. That's not Earth. The Earth has 4 corners, according to the Bible, because the Bible says in Isaiah 11:12, He will raise a banner for the nations and gather the exiles of Israel. He will assemble the scattered people of Judah from the 4 quarters of earth. So that means that the earth has 4 quarters or 4 corners. So in the Bible, it clearly says that the earth has 4 corners. So that thing, whatever that is, that cannot be earth. Wait, you're right. I mean, even though I don't believe in the Bible, this makes sense. I mean, there is no way Muslims can go to space. We must have come to some sort of weird alien planet, and these aliens just happen to look like those Muslims who supposedly went to space. I know, right? That's what I've been saying. You're right. Let's go look for Earth. Earth, where are you? Earth, hello, Earth. Man, it's cold out here. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Islamic Defense Podcast. Today we will discuss a popular ex-Muslim YouTuber by the name of Abdullah Sameer. He is just like any other ex-Muslim who hate Islam and Muslims so much that this waste of breath had to make a 7-minute video whining about why Muslims went to space and pray. This shows that they don't really care about scientific progress or any progress for humankind, because it doesn't matter what a person does in space after going there. The fact that more and more humans are going to space is a good thing for all of humankind. If an atheist or an ex-Muslim goes to space, I'm not gonna make a video whining about why they went to space. If anything, I would congratulate them. However, instead of congratulations, Muslims get insulted even when we go to space. This is how petty and pathetic these people are. Regardless, let's see what this bearded Harry Potter has to say about space and Islam.
U.A.E.'s first ever Muslim astronaut going into space. He's going to be the first astronaut who is not just going into space, but they're obviously concerned about, you know what, the most important thing you need to know when you go to space. How to pray. How to do the Islamic prayer in outer space. Muslims are taking the ancient rituals from the 7th century into the 21st century into outer space. That's right.
Oh my God! You are right, Abdullah. If God exists and certain ancient practice stops you from going to the hellfire, then it is clearly a waste of time. I mean, you should obviously go to the hellfire and ignore the thing that can save your life and whine about it on YouTube. That sounds like a great idea. Anyway, let's continue.
When we read the Quran, The Quran gives a geocentric worldview. It talks about the sky being held up without any pillars they can see. It talks about the sky being raised. It talks about the orbit of the sun and the moon and how the moon can't catch the sun.
Now keep this in mind. This is his first premise, that the Quran gives you geocentric worldview. That the Quran has verses that contradicts current scientific understanding. Here he is committing the faulty comparison fallacy. The Quran is not a book of science. According to the verse 3:7, it says, "He is the one who revealed to you the book. Of it are verses absolutely clear. They are the foundation of the book, and others are allegorical." So as you can see, nowhere does it say that the clear verses are talking about science. Also, nowhere does it say that the allegorical verses are talking about science either. According to Ibn Kathir, there are ayat that are mukammat, entirely clear and plain. And these ayats or verses are the foundations of the book, which are plain for everyone. And then there are ayats or verses in the Quran that are mutashabihat, that are not entirely clear or allegorical for many or some people. The mukammat or the clear verses are the verses that explains the abrogating rule, the allowed, prohibited laws, limits, obligations, and rulings that should be believed in and implemented. So basically, the clear verses are the rules or the basics of Sharia law. As for the mustabihat ayat, they include the abrogated ayat, parables, oath, allegories, what should be believed in but not implemented, or in other words, the allegorical verses or matters of the unseen, which we are told to believe in but we cannot see. So comparing science with verses of mutashabihat or allegories like this are fallacious. It's like comparing science with poetry. So this premise of his is false and baseless, since Quran never claimed to be a book of science.
When you read the Isra wal Miraj, when he talks about how he goes from heaven to heaven to heaven, you start to understand what was going through his mind, that there was actual worlds up there that people lived on.
Here he is making the question fallacy. Basically, it is any form of argument where the conclusion is assumed in one of the premises. For example, he said if you read Isra and Miraj, you will start to understand what was going through his mind. What makes him think that the Prophet was lying about this incident? First of all, does he have any evidence for this claim? No. He just assumes that Isra and Miraj never happened. Then he comes to a conclusion based on an assumption that is not proven. How do you know Isra and Miraj never happened? How do you know he wasn't telling the truth? Do you have any evidence for this? No. So this is not very logical for a person claiming to have become rational now, is it? If I assume that Abdullah Sameer was never a Muslim, then make the argument that I think Abdullah was an atheist paid by the ex-Muslims of North America because he always supports them. Would he accept my argument? Of course not, because it is irrational. If you're going to claim that someone is a liar, then you have to prove it first. Then make your argument. Don't just assume.
The 7 heavens are actually 7 planets. People thought these were like existences just like Earths. And you'll find some hadith even talking about the 7 heavens and the 7 Earths. So there's actually multiple Earths.
Again, here he is committing the same fallacy. What makes him think the 7 heavens are 7 planets? If the Prophet was really making up the heavens, then why would he make 7 heavens? Why not thousands or millions? When we look at the night sky, do we only see 7 stars or do we see millions of stars? If the Prophet was really just making up the heavens, seeing the stars, he would have said there are millions of heavens. He wouldn't have said that there are only 7 heavens. Also, he is committing the false equivalence fallacy. The 7 heavens and 7 earths are not the same thing. Even in the hadith he quotes, the heavens and earth are mentioned separately. If they were the same thing, then why were they mentioned separately? 7 heavens could be anything. It could be a number of different things. It could be 7 different universes or 7 dimensions. Who knows? We can actually prove that Isra Miraj did happen. However, inshallah, I will discuss that in a separate video.
Our planet is in an obscure corner of the Milky Way galaxy. nowhere important. We're definitely not the center of the universe. We're not even this, we're in the middle of nowhere, you can say. That's us, humanity, floating on a rock, really in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, no, we're definitely not in the middle of nowhere. While it is true that we may or may not be at the center of the universe in an absolute sense, however, we are at the center of the universe from an observable point of view. You see, the observable universe is the region of the universe we can observe, defined by how far light has traveled since the Big Bang, 13.8 billion years ago. But this does not mean that the Earth is the center of the universe. If you were to move to another star 10 billion light years away, you would still be the center of your own significantly different observable universe. Also, since ex-Muslims and atheists say that they love science, and since science is based on observation, then one could argue from an observable point of view that we are at the center of the universe, no matter where we go. So saying we're not at the center of the universe is not necessarily true. We are, if you're talking about the observable universe. But regardless, also, our Earth is in the Goldilocks zone. I mean, that itself is not special. What makes Earth special is that Earth is in the only planet that is in the Goldilocks zone. Venus and Mars are also in the habitable zone, but they are currently habitable. That's the strange thing. I mean, Venus is Earth's sister planet. Both are about the same size and in the same region of the solar system. And Venus once also had water, according to Professor Webb. However, Venus now has a runaway greenhouse effect going on with a surface temperature of over 460 degrees Celsius, which has boiled away all its liquid water. At the other end of the Sun's Goldilocks zone is Mars, which also once had liquid water flowing across its surface in rivers, lakes, and oceans. However, the red planet is now freeze-dried desert with a thin carbon dioxide atmosphere and only 1/99 the atmospheric pressure of sea level on Earth. So, the lack of both significant atmosphere and global magnetic field, thanks to its mostly solidified core, means that Martian surface is constantly being bombarded by radiation by the sun. Any water still on Mars which hasn't degassed into space and been blown away by the solar wind or irradiated into hydroxyl on the surface is either frozen in the planet's ice caps and permafrost or quickly subducts directly from ice to gas during the local Martian summer. While there is some evidence pointing to the possible existence of subsurface saltwater brines which can seep to the surface, we are yet to find any life on the red planet. You can read about this in an article about the Goldilocks zone by abcu.net. Now this is the thing. Both of these planets could have easily been home to intelligent life. But it wasn't. We live in Earth where we just happen to have the exact amount of water, the exact amount of air, the exact amount of atmosphere, the exact amount of necessary conditions we need for life, and also the only planet in the entire universe, as we know so far, to have intelligent life, as far as we know anyway. So no, we're not floating on a rock in the middle of nowhere. We are on a very special rock, and this is the only rock we can be in. So, and this is at just the right distance from the sun. We need to be, have exactly the necessary atmosphere for life, have just the amount of air we need, also a strong magnetic field protecting us. So no, we're in a very special rock. It's not just some random rock.
Islam doesn't predict or explain how to pray in space. So it makes you wonder, If this religion was really meant for all time, why didn't it use fixed intervals for prayers? Why is it that the prayer times are based on sunrise and sunset? Well, obviously that's how the ancient Arabs used to calculate time.
Here he is committing the black and white fallacy. Basically, he is only giving you two options when more than two exist. He's arguing either a prayer has to be easy to do in space or it's made up by the Arabs. However, there is a third option. One could argue that why have the practice of prayers at all? Why not just let us stay on Earth? You know what? I'll go even further. Why send us on Earth anyway? Why not just let us stay in heaven? So, the whole point of sending us to Earth, or praying or fasting, is to test us. These things are not supposed to be easy because they are a test. Even on Earth, it's not supposed to be easy. Many people struggle to pray 5 times a day on Earth, let alone in space. So complaining about prayer in space is like complaining about a math test. This is completely emotional and fallacious logic. Just because something is hard to follow doesn't mean it's man-made or false. As a matter of fact, if Islam was man-made, chances are things in general would be much easier, not harder.
What's Haza going to say in the final moments before takeoff? Tawakkalna ala Allah. We place our trust in Allah. But really, are you placing your trust in Allah? Or are you placing your trust in science and in technology and in the engineering of humans who built this spaceship, and in the policies and the safety checks and the processes that were taken and the manufacturing, and again back to the engineering? Are you trusting them or are you trusting in Allah? What does Allah have to do with any of this?
Here he is committing the conflicting conditions fallacy. Basically, he is contradicting himself, or he is presenting a self-contradictory argument. At one hand, he is acknowledging that the astronaut is a Muslim. Then he is arguing, but Allah SWT isn't important to him. It's like saying, I like Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, but I don't like fantasy movies. Either you like fantasy movies or not. You can't say that you like 2 fantasy movies, but then at the same time, you don't like fantasy movies. That's a contradiction. Same thing here. Either you acknowledge that this astronaut is a Muslim and Allah SWT is the most important thing to him, or he's not a Muslim and he shouldn't pray. You cannot say he's a Muslim but he shouldn't pray. This argument is self-contradictory and stupid.
It's going to be so obvious, and it should be already obvious as we are now making little baby steps into space, that how silly this is, how ridiculous it is that we are still clinging on to these ancient proto-pagan practices. These practices that were born in the 7th century in pagan Arabia. These practices that we have no need for, that we should be moving past now.
Moving past where? To the hellfire? Also, if this is really that we should stop all ancient practices, if this is really the case, then can you please do me a favor and stop talking? Talking is such a old and ancient practice, you should really just leave it behind and stop talking, since you hate ancient practices so much. And speaking to one another is the most oldest form of ancient practice. And since you hate ancient practices, you should stop talking. You know what really pisses me off? A few years ago, there was an actual crime in space. An astronaut named Anne McClain was accused of her estranged spouse, Summer Worden, of signing into Worden's personal bank account from NASA-affiliated computers aboard the International Space Station. The ex-Muslims have no problem with this. But if the Muslims pray in space, oh no! All of a sudden, if Muslims pray in space and have a healthy religious life, then all of a sudden they all start barking like dogs. This shows that they don't really care about space or science or space welfare. They just hate Muslims no matter what. Regardless, may Allah guide people like him back to Islam. With that, I'll end the video. If you like this video, please do like, share, comment, subscribe, and inshallah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.